Good evening. I want to talk to you tonight about the history of the Dearne Dove Canal. This canal was formed by an Act of Parliament back in 1793. I've actually got a copy of the Act of Parliament in the reign of King George III. And just to sort of quote what the Act says, it says an Act for making and maintaining a navigable canal from the River Dun navigation cut in the township of Swinton to or near the town of Barnsley in the parish of Silkstone in the West Riding of the county of York, and to certain collateral cuts branching out of the said canal. So the River Dun, we now call the River Don. The River Don was already a navigable waterway. A navigation is a waterway which has elements of a natural river. So the parts of the river are canalised to make a navigation. A canal is purely man-made. The Dearne Dove was a man-made canal, all the way from Swinton through to Barnsley. Now, to form the company, actually, listed in the Act, it reads like a who's who of the aristocracy of Yorkshire and the squirearchy of Yorkshire. We start, first of all, His Grace the Duke of Leeds, the Right Honourable Earl Fitzwilliam, Sir Lionel Copley, and name after name after name it goes through. There's over 200 people came together to form the company of the Dearne and Dove Canal. So the scene was set, the contractors were appointed, the engineers were appointed, and the canal began later in that year. It was completed in 1804, roughly 10 miles in length, and it had a system of 25 locks. So all the way through from Swinton to Barnsley, a true canal with two branches. One branch went to Worsborough and one branch went to Elsica. And at the heads of those branches were reservoirs to supply water for the canal. Called the Dearne and Dove because it drew water also from the rivers Dearne and the River Dove. When it got to Barnsley, it linked up with the Barnsley Canal, which then went on to Wakefield. There was a further Act of Parliament required, and again I've got a copy of that here, and this one is dated 1800, and this was to allow for the completion of the canal, where certain works were still outstanding. That's in 1800, and as I said, the canal was completed in 1804. Now, I'm not going to be able to talk about the whole length of the canal in the time we have allowed, but I will certainly try and talk about some of the features that we have here in Swinton. The principal purpose of the waterway was to carry coal, but it did also carry pig iron, glass, lime, oil products, and also general merchandise. Its heyday didn't really last too long, because then in 1840 the railway line, if we can just turn around to my left now, the retaining wall there supports the railway line of the Derby to Leeds Railway through Swinton, and which was completed in 1840 by the engineer George Stephenson. Now, once that sort of railway came along, that really started taking traffic away from the canal. An interesting thing that happened as well when it was being constructed through Swinton, a deep cutting was created at what we would call the Bow Broom area now, and I'm going to show you a photograph of that just to try and explain it. But when that cutting was created, there was actually a canal tunnel, and it was called the Adwick Tunnel. Now we might think, well, Adwick-on-Dearne is 2 miles away, but at that time Swinton did not have a parish status, and that part of Swinton was still in the ancient parish of Adwick-on-Dearne. The railway came along, and a deep wide cutting was created, and at that time the canal tunnel was destroyed and the canal was recut to follow the line of the railway. The canal tunnel was probably quite a bottleneck, because it was only wide enough for one boat to get through at a time, so you can imagine a backlog of boats at either side waiting to get through. In 1849 the railways reached from Doncaster came to Swinton, and there was an amalgamation then, and the other further Acts of Parliament, we're now in the reign of Queen Victoria, and this is making several lines of railway between Penistone, Barnsley, Elsica, Sheffield, Rotherham, Wakefield, Huddersfield. And at that time the railways amalgamated with the canal companies as well. But to be fair, the canals were always the poor relation, and the Act of Parliament allowed for certain parts of the canal to be filled in to create railway lines, and there was always a complaint about high fees for the boat keepers, and poor maintenance, because it was secondary to the railways. It made sense for them to amalgamate, because the same group of engineers, the navigators, the navvies, were the men who built the canals, the contractors who established those gangs, also went on to carry on building the railways. Another thing that affected the canal was subsidence from the much mining activity in the area, and the constant repairs were always needed as cracks appeared in the canal infrastructure. The branch at Worsborough closed in 1906, and the Eltica branch closed in 1928. Moving on in time, the last full journey by barge of the whole length of the canal, right the way from Swinton to Barnsley, was in 1934. Until the 1950s, coal was taken out of Manvers Colliery, but then that part was abandoned then. But we were left with this remainder waterway that we have in Swinton, this canal spur, which is a fantastic little nature reserve now. But this was retained to actually load in sand to the Dale Brown Glassworks. The short spur remained in water, and the last sand barge came along in 1977. I would like now just to sort of show some photographs just to explain what I've been talking about. We're sort of sat about here by the retaining wall of the railway. This is the old Swinton station. This is Whiteley Road, and there's the crane that unloaded the barges which carried sand to the Dale Brown Glassworks. This area of the canal was called by the barge operators Hampshire Water, and the Humpback Bridge in Swinton is actually called Hampshire Bridge. I don't know why it's got that name, but the Hampshire Bridge, and this was known as Hampshire Water. So this is the canal boat, this is the barges on the spur where we are sat this evening. Now, from the Sheffield and South Yorkshire navigation, you would need to come through the locks. Now, the white building is the former ship pub, and around the canal junction there was created quite a thriving community with facilities for boat building, pubs which served the trade. There was a boatman's mission, there was warehousing, and so quite a bit of trade came along because of the consequences of the canal junction here in Swinton. Now, if we look a little bit further along, this image is it's a little bit blurred, but this image it carries the railway over the canal, and this is on the Bobroom side of the waterway. So we've now gone through the railway bridge, and you can see the towpath just about, and the way it went up towards what was the tunnel, as I first explained. Now this is the canal sort of after closure. This is how it looked as the canal proceeded over the field at Queen Street. The properties that you can see are houses on Queen's Avenue, and this was actually nicknamed Swinton Lido, and it was a place where people probably shouldn't have been doing it. It was very dangerous, but the youngsters used to swim in here. It was known as Swinton Lido. This was actually, when the canal closed, this was actually filled in. It was like a landfill operation, and all that was filled in. Quite an old colour photograph now I'm going to show you. This is of a gentleman fishing, and he is sat on the railway side of the banking. You can see maybe they count the signals in the end, and here he is fishing in the Dearne Dove Canal as it went through the Queen Street area. So that gives you an impression of what it looked like. Now, I did mention the Adwick Tunnel, and This is an older image where you can see, I hope you can see, the waterway, there is the canal there, going off towards Manvers. Here is the railway line. This is looking down from Bowbroom Bridge. 4 lines, the up and down main and the up and down slow lines. This deep cutting was created in 1840 when the railway came right the way through Swinton on its journey from Derby to Leeds. And there we have the water. This is what it looks like nowadays. There's still some sections of this in water, here and there. Now we've only got 2 railway lines, but you can see the line of the cutting. And around this area was the location of the Adwick Tunnel, a long lost canal tunnel. There are some remnants, but very difficult to find because it is extremely overgrown in that area. So that's the history of a lost canal. Really, the writing was on the wall when the railways came, and the canal will always remain the poor relation. So its heyday really was not very long. All that remains now is this section where people can enjoy fishing, and right on cue we've got some wildlife coming along just to see what we're up to. A little flotilla. A beautiful little spot. Thank you very much.